Welcome to the Sunday Times Politics Weekly, where we talk about the big political issues of the moment. My name is Mike Siluma. In this week's episode, we're talking to Professor Bonang Mohale, who is a highly respected business leader, an academic, author, and he also is the chairperson of the Bidvest Group and the Chancellor of the University of the Free State. This week, we're talking to him about the G20, which we are hosting as South Africa. He will help us to unpack the significance and the benefits of South Africa hosting this very important global conference.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things.
We will not be bullied.
Like we told mirrors to US, we're not just backers.
The president did want them to say, if you're going to fire, we'll take it as declaration of war.
I can't be threatened by Zuma. I defeated Zuma.
You're dealing with Jacob Zuma. Every stage is a theater for him.
We're not sending help to criminals. We're going to smoke them out. They will come out.
There has not been agreement in terms of parties in the executive.
The executive must come here.
The people of Palestine, they're denied the right to enjoy the freedoms we so love.
Welcome to the Politics Weekly. And
for having me.
There has been a lot of talk about the G20 and the preparations for it, and also the issue of the absence of the President of the United States. But I thought we should start by looking at the significance, Hori, with South Africa hosting the G20. What does that mean for the country?
Maybe let me start with my role within the G20. Been absolutely blessed with some amazing opportunities. I've led not one, but 3 Business 20 delegations. The first one was in Tokyo in Japan, where we spent at least a week to take over what needed to be done by business. The second one was in Osaka in Japan, funny enough. The third, I accompanied the president in the same plane, actually, when we went to Toronto, the G7, as part of the G20 preparations. So now I'm retired and I'm pulled out of retirement to be a Sherpa of the Values 20 as part of the G20. So the G20 initially, when it formed, it was the 20 biggest economies of the world. And South Africa happens to make it in that. South Africa does not make it as part of the 5 BRICS countries, because by comparison, all the 4 big countries' economies are in trillions of rands. Mm-hmm. South Africa is 400 billion. So size-wise, it doesn't. But we were included because it was seen that we could be a gateway to the rest of the continent, where the access is to 1.5 billion people in Africa. 55 countries include West Sahara, and of course, that speak 3,000 languages. With a continental GDP that is almost the size of probably Germany, and to a large extent, maybe India. Mm-hmm. So the G20 has always been important in setting a government agenda. Many years later, they then realized that actually it's business that drives economies. It's business people that invest. It's business people that do infrastructure. Then they started inviting business people. Business people would meet at least a week before. They would agree on the 4 or 5 things that the leaders of government then need to sign up to as part of their agenda. Mm. In 2020 in Saudi Arabia, they decided, but we've been talking G20 for so many decades, but the world is not becoming a better place. Maybe there's a place to introduce this notion of values. So values started for the first time in Saudi Arabia. And since then, like in business, it says, let this help the leaders at the most difficult times. Like now we are faced with 3 global wars at the same time. Mm. How then do you make decisions without necessarily picking sides? So the values became important, because if you subscribe to values, that becomes your true north. They are not fair weather. They allow you to say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. So as the Sherpa, we then have about 18 Sherpas whose job it is to take over from Brazil, last year. For this whole year, we're having conversations.
So the Sherpas do what? They do the preparatory work, they consult with the principals, or what is their role?
Exactly. So the Sherpa is the chairman of that grouping. So now we've got women, we've got youth, we've got society, we've got business. So the Sherpa really is a Tibetan word. This is the person whose job it is to carry the load of the people who want to submit, but also look after their well-being, personal care and safety, but also point them in the right direction. So it's a chairman. But also you allow the conversation with other stakeholders so that at the end you have your own multiple conversations, culminates in a summit where you now, in the case of values, you agree the 5 values that you want to forward to the principals, the leadership summit, which happens this week in Nazareth. So we'll forward these 5 values. The eminent persons group, chaired by former Minister Trevor Manuel, have just issued theirs 2 days ago. Business is doing theirs as we speak. So it's so that when they are thinking through and they are writing commitments, they've got input from civil society, from women, from youth, from society, and indeed from the values and indeed business. That's what they're going to do. And then they will produce this document that says, for the next year, as the leaders of the biggest economies of the world, we've committed to these 4 or 5 things. So only during the creation of B20, then the government 20 was, because business is called B20, they then said will be G20, so that there's W20, T20, and indeed V20.
But broadly speaking, the value to the country of hosting big international events like this, what would you say it is? I mean, G20, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's any other conference, that the international conference that comes to South Africa.
Let me use an example with the Olympics in Paris, because it wasn't France, it was Paris. In those 16 days, Paris attracted 16 million people. It's almost 1 million people a day. It added $838 billion to the economy. It's a town, Paris. South Africa, by comparison, 31 years of democracy, we have never reached 10 million tourists a year. They did this in 2 weeks. When we met President Thabo Mbeki as part of the big business working group, we correctly identified that tourism has the potential to be the greatest forex earner for the country. If played well, tourism can contribute a minimum of 10% to our national GDP, which is now 400 billion. So that's 40 billion just on tourism. We haven't reached 10 billion yet. So it's our fault. But the theory is really simple, that if you host global events well, you have an opportunity to palette, highlight, and celebrate your country. If 1% of those people who came for the event came back as tourists, it has paid for itself. That is the theory.
Okay. All right. So the benefit is in the case of the G20, for example, the benefit is beyond just the trade or international relations conversations.
Oh yes, absolutely.
For brand South Africa.
In fact, you've hit the nail on the head, because if we play our cards well, first during the year of G20, because the chairmanship is just 1 year, it rotates, you can fill up your hotels at least 4 times in just that 1 year. The epic will be now. When you look, there's not a hotel that is not fully booked up now. And that's the value. So that's money to the economy. But you really want, because when people plan their own holidays with their families, they don't sit with a globe, with a pencil and say, picky, money more. And they take their families to where they've been because they want them to have the same experiences. Phuket is a good example. And Thailand is a good example. They started as backpackers. They got 30 million visitors a year. Now they're moving upstream and say, we want business people because they stay longer. They spend more money per night. Now they can move up the value chain. So I think South Africa could have done that. The tragedy is we are the first country in Africa to host the G20. We're the first country in Africa to be a member of the G20. We're the first to be invited to the G7. We're the first to hold the Soccer World Cup in the continent. We are one of only 2 countries in the world that has hosted all 4 World Cups. Mm-hmm. But
so which World Cups? The
soccer, the rugby,
or the
and the cricket.
World
Yes.
Cups, yeah.
Only 2 countries in the world has hosted all 3. Mm-hmm. We're one of only 2. Mm-hmm. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, has it translated in just 2 things? Improving the quality of lives of the majority of our people, mm-hmm. so that there's a better life for all, not just elected officials. And that's where we have done dismally because of other things. Mm-hmm. But in theory, honestly, it works. When you say, I want to see the Nordic countries, and I want to see the miracle of nature in the sky at night, mm-hmm. It's because you've been there before. Yes, it's because you've been there before. Now you take your exco there, you take your family there, and then you put it on the basket list. Mm-hmm. If you are one of 8.2 billion people in the world today, you have never been to the Ngorongoro crater. You have never seen the migration. You haven't lived. You haven't seen the glory of Jehovah.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the run-up to the summit, there was a lot said about the position of the United States. And there were a lot of things that have been said by the President of the United States, very negative things about South Africa, the whole story about the genocide and all of that. Do you think that we have done enough to defend and advance the image of brand South Africa globally, internationally? How have we done in defending the brand, that is our country?
So my grandmother says, when you are talking to somebody who hates you or does not like you, don't waste your time to try and convince them, because it's unlikely they will like you back. Better you walk away. Mm-hmm. Trump 1.0 demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt that the President of the United States is against anything that is woke, that is progressive. He's a racist. He's against women. He's against people that prefer the same gender. He's against Muslims. He called us shithole countries, excuse the French. 1.0. Now, and he has demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt that if the facts don't favor him, he'll manufacture his own. So this notion of misinformation and disinformation was popularized by him. Mm-hmm. So, he's a racist. He doesn't like us. He's pro-Israel. He'll do everything to protect Israel. So under those circumstances, as a country that is autonomous, you ask yourself, do I even waste my time to try and convince this person? Because I know they want. He's also a bully. He believes in the currency of tariffs. I get my way or else. So why waste your time? Mm-hmm. But also what we forget is that this has nothing to do with South Africa. Trump 2.0 came at a time that globalization has not worked for the majority of Americans. Mm-hmm. It's an American problem. 2, at a time that America has lost the plot. And therefore, they realize that China has won the trade war. You look at automobile industry. We see them in this country. They've decimated good quality cars from Germany, for instance. Mm-hmm. What we used to pay 2 million rand for a car, mm-hmm. they bring the same car with the same specs, if not more, for 800,000. And you see the decimation. Mm. The big ones, 147, decline. 47 was the lowest, which is VW. Under those circumstances, the US of A looks at this and say, we have lost the trade war. Because what Chinese did, they thought far in advance. Initially, they were a low-cost economy. They manufactured mostly for Americans. But what we didn't know is that they do an 8-to-5 manufacturing for the Apples. Mm-hmm. And then at night, they use the same machines to produce their own. Mm. That's where counterfeit goods started. But they developed the skills, the abilities and capabilities. They use the same standard. Today, no country can touch them. So on electric vehicles and the batteries that power them, the United States realized that I've lost this. So when you play chess and you see that you're about to be checkmated Of course, you kick the table so that you restart. That's what the President of the United States is doing. So he's solving domestic problems at the time that they are at their most borrowed. And he's saying, oh, what can we do? Let's go and pull our weight around. So he wants to take us back to the era where 3 countries sat around the table like they did on the 25th of February, 1838, during the Berlin Conference, to draw up the borders of Africa, to say this will be Francophone, this will be Lusophone, this will be Anglophone. And we still respect those borders up until today. That's what they want. So this is less than 5% of the population. That's going to dictate to the other 8.2 billion people. So as South Africa, we should have realized that 65 million people will not even a spit in the bucket. We should not have even tried to talk to him because, he's not listening.
But in terms of, if we put him aside and we look at how, as a consequence, because he's a very influential person, whether we like what he says or not, isn't there a risk that some people might begin to believe the things he's saying about South Africa?
Of course they do, absolutely. And I think that's where you're spot on. So first, 2 things are important. It's the biggest economy in the world still, even though China is on the heels. And China was bigger than them before. And I like what Xi Jinping said when the trade wars started and the tariffs, 150%, etc. Xi Jinping said, no, we're not going to worry. We'll just reciprocate. And Xi Jinping said something very profound. He says, the whole of the United States is a 300-year-old country. We are 5,000 years old. Trump, at the most, will be back for 4 years. 2 before the primaries. If they lose some seats, we only have 2 years to worry about. At the most, it's 4 years. That's why he's not developing
so he's
an
looking
answer.
at the long game.
Yes,
so much
because
like
the Chinese are very good at that.
Yeah.
That's the first. The second is to say, the 20 biggest economies in the world. So what if one doesn't come? The 19 are there. Especially because it has so many components. Government won't come, but business, American business, has always been here with us side by side. And even as we speak, they are here. Because they don't need to be told literally by politicians what to do and what not. They are doing the deals. They are helping us to solve load shedding forever. They are helping us to fix our infrastructure. They are helping us with law and order, safety and security. That's where the opportunity is. They know that Democratic Republic of Congo produces 80% of the cobalt that's needed for electric vehicles and the batteries that power them. And South Africa is a springboard. They also know that all the minerals that the world needs, not once, is found here, not as number 17 or 19, but as either number 1 or number 2. So there are business opportunities here. So the president yesterday did 3 things in one day. One of them was to go and open a mine in Mpumalanga. And this is business people that are investing. So for us, we should have looked at the broader scheme of things to say, if I've got 20 marbles and I lose 1, can I focus on the 19, not on the 1 that I've lost? So by comparison, even though it is the biggest economy in the world, it's 339 million people, 127 trillion US dollars. The world is 150 times bigger than that.
But the question I was asking you earlier is, are we doing enough to speak for ourselves globally?
This is where we could do better. Because you see, South Africa has the moral high ground. We are the only country in the world that was colonized for 400 years. 98 years of separate development. 48 years of institutionalized apartheid. The only country that the 198 United Nations countries declared apartheid a crime against humanity. The only country that had an ex-convict, President Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela, who went on to become the best president in the world. So when he could tell the United States of America to say, you're not going to choose for me who my friends are. He went through the United States to go and see Fidel Castro in Cuba during the height of sanctions because he could hold his ground. He said, but he's my friends. They helped us during the height of apartheid. We came to you, America, first. You chose to be on the side of apartheid. So don't tell us what to do. And he did it with respect. He went and saw Muammar Gaddafi at the time that there were sanctions against Libya by the UK after Pan Am flight. But he went. He said, my first pistol I got from him because he was on our side of the struggle. So we had chosen the moral high ground. We had chosen the side of social justice. Only now, I think we're losing it in terms of foreign relations because we say on paper we are non-aligned. But actually in our actions, we have chosen sides. We saw Vladimir Putin probably 10 times before we saw Volodymyr Zelensky, even though most of our comrades were trained in the Ukraine part of Russia. We chose that between the Palestinians and the Israelis, we chose the side of the oppressed, rightfully so. So we chose side. So I think we were not able to articulate. So when you go and somebody says, but bad things are happening in South Africa, there's a white genocide. I think we needed to say no more than 3 things. To say, first of all, is the black people that have been oppressed. And you define what oppression is. And you define what racism is. And then secondly, you say, actually, we have the best constitution in the world. We are governed by the constitution because we chose to be a constitutional democracy. That's the supremacy of our document. If you don't understand who we are, at least read it. For me, I would have ended by saying, honestly, for somebody to call himself a racist, 3 things have to be present concurrently, simultaneously, in parallel. Number 1, you must believe in your inherent superiority. Black people don't. Number 2, you must have power. Black people still don't have power. Thirdly, you use that power to exclude. It must be those 3. No in history have black people ever done that, let alone in South Africa. Put differently, I would have looked in the centerpiece of the pupils of his eyes and say, what is it that black people have excluded white people from doing as a group? And would have struggled to find one. Because inherently we are just not racist. And that's really knowing your story, knowing what you stand for, and telling your own story rather than somebody telling their own story. If you show me graves on the side of the road, I live in South Africa. I know the 9 provinces as a president. I know the 65 million South Africans. I would have looked at that picture and said, this is not us. Just check your source. It can't be us. Because I drive it up and down.
And we don't bury people alongside the highway.
It will be against the law.
Yes. Yeah.
So you had plenty of ammunition to look at it and say, no, pull another one. But of course, we went there cap in hand. We are only a small economy. Please have mercy upon us. Rather than standing on the side of principles. I would rather be poor, principled, than be rich and sell my soul.
Now, let's talk about the state of the country. Just to cycle back. Recently, I saw, you in one of your videos. You said one of the things you said was that the country has moved backward. What did you mean by that?
So first, let me start with the good news. So this week, of course, Fitch decided to give us an
S&P,
Standards and Poor's decided to give us an upgrade, and our outlook is positive. That's good news. But we are still below investment grade. So we're still junk. Systemically, some asset managers are still not able to invest. Good news, tick. Last week, the good news was we were removed from the grey list. We should never have been in the grey list in the first place. So those are the good news. So you can see the green shoots are there. But you see, facts you can't deny. But truth you can apply. The facts say we have regained our status as Africa's biggest economy. We took over from Nigeria. We were big, Nigeria took over, now we have reclaimed it. But in 2025, we are a $400 billion economy. We were the same in 2016. So going backwards means time value of money, our discretionary purchasing power and disposable income in 2025 buys us less compared to 2016. But another metric you could use is the last 15 years, we have not grown by more than 2% a year. GDP growth I'm talking about. Yet population growth is 1.5. So if your population is growing faster than your GDP growth, of course you are going backwards. The last metric is to say the 65 million South Africans, we are the most poorest now than we were before. Because 30 million people live below the poverty datum line. By our own admission, we say 28 million of them are on social security. We say 10 million young people are not in employment, education and training. 6 million boys have never seen their fathers. That's going backwards.
And let's talk about the issue of patriotism. While we're doing a balance sheet of the country, of what's positive and what's negative. Do you think that we've got sufficient consciousness about patriotism in this country?
This is where I think we could do more. And let me start with business, because I'm a businessman. Imagine if business didn't give us platitudes about gender equality and gender pay parity, but actually delivered social justice. Because business the world over, business at all material times, have always had two mandates. One, it's an economic mandate. The other has always been a social mandate. That's the one we choose to forget. So when business creates jobs, it's not an act of corporate social investment. You're creating a market of the future. Because there's always a problem when your own employees can't afford the goods and the services that you produce. That's a good measure. That's number one. Number two, business in this country employs 16.5 million people. Government, 2.3 million at the height. Now, with COVID and etc., you can say, okay, 13.5 million people in the private sector, 1.3 million in the public sector. So it means when the private sector is transformed, South Africa will be transformed. So, as a CEO, I will not have to make beautiful statements on my annual financial statements. I'll go to my HR department on Monday and say, please print me a spreadsheet of how we pay women versus men for work of equal value, and put a plan in place to close the gap. Even if it takes me 100 years, that's more useful. Imagine for a moment if business paid black women-owned businesses in 30 days, and they get more than double what they've lost in interest in BE points. Won't that make sense? We're beginning to measure those that pay in 7 days. Imagine if business itself said we need to continue to do well by doing good, because doing good is good for everyone. Because business can't continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. Who's going to be their customers? Especially because South Africa is only 65 million people. It's small. The US of A, like I said, 339 million. But it's the continent that has the numbers the same as China, the same as India, 1.5 billion. That's where, for me, the opportunity lies. But even as individuals, I think it needs to worry us that we're not intentional in how we're lifting as we rise. How we, when you have an opportunity to occupy the spaces that your own people don't ordinarily occupy, there are only really two things you can do. One, you can continue to be palleted, highlighted, and celebrated as the first one and only, or you could kick down the doors. Yes. Or you could kick down the doors and bring people that look like you. That's what every other nationality does. And why don't we choose the latter? And then as government, you have to love your people to lead them. So as government, it's a strange kind of love when we have now succumbed to greed and we spend a whole year talking about Vusumuzi Ket Matlala and about how he has captured the South African police service. The question we should be asking ourselves is, who is guarding the guards when the police themselves are getting bribes from drug lords, gangsters, and murderers? That should really worry us. And the last one, I think, to show our patriotism, we need to say, let's agree few things, not just for nation building and social cohesion. That would really power up the economy of this country, because it's economic growth that will eliminate the high levels of unemployment. To be able to do that, really few things that we need to do. Number one, I think we need all of us, the four social partners, including Labour, to say we must root out and defeat state capture. Number two, we need to complete the task of transformation. This economy must look like us, because if it doesn't, it's these black people that have nothing to lose, therefore they'll ban the library that serves the two jobs.
But here is the thing. Of late, I'm sure you've been following or maybe even participating in the debate about BEE. Of late, it looks like there has been a pushback against that, against BEE, against transformation.
Yeah, we shouldn't have been naive not to expect that there'll be pushback. Because who are the people who are pushing back? Are the people that themselves are beneficiaries of Afrikaner empowerment. Because they've benefited. They say, no, now we must talk about meritocracy. It's the DA. Because the DA say, no, we must get rid of BE because it has benefited only the few politically connected, which is true. But why throw the whole baby with the bathwater? And they're saying we want to replace it with a form that still keeps us as white people in charge. So that because we're in charge, these blacks are good, the poor ones, for food parcels. Not the ownership of the economy of this country. That's their form of BE. But you see, just because we implemented it wrongly by greedy politicians doesn't mean the policy itself is not sound. Because what BE does is really just providing the boots and the bootstraps with which people can pull themselves up. And let me make you an example why this is still relevant today. The black soldiers that fought in the Second World War, Mendy is a good example. When they came back, as gratitude, they were given dijase, majoni. The really good ones, they were given bicycles. White male Afrikaners were given farms. So 5 to midnight before the 27th of April 1994, the Stellenbosch municipality gives farms to white male Afrikaners on a 99 lease. You and I, if we want a farm today, our own black government, our own DFIs, NEF, IDC, DBSA, CEDA, CIFA that is now merged, they'll ask you for a collateral. Just for a farm, for you to farm. And yet the people who oppose land expropriation without compensation is the DA. With the full knowledge that the 1913 Land Act was the 10th land expropriation without compensation against African people. So once you have benefited, of course, it allows you now the mic to be able to talk. But what they forget, and I think what we should really enforce, is to say, contrition is an ongoing thing. You have to continuously ask for forgiveness and be eternally grateful for the mercy shown, because the essence of truth is to let suffering speak. They want to have benefited for 400 years. They must still speak for us. Who's telling our stories?
Now, you just mentioned that we should have expected that there will be a pushback, but you also say, concede that BE as has been implemented has benefited far too few people, and the majority of black people have not benefited. How does it get fixed?
Absolutely, is to go back to the basics and say, but why did we form the ANC in 1912? After 1910, the Union of South Africa, the 4 provinces, and we are the only ones who were denied voting rights. Why did we form them? For 2 things. And those 2 things were still there when we went on the 27th of June, 1955 in Kliptown. And those 2 things are still here today when we wrote our constitution that the president signed in law 10th of May, 1996, 2 years after we voted. It was really improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people and a better life for all. It's in all the slogans of all the ANC manifestos, not just the elected few. And yet that's the one dream that we really have not fulfilled. So if that's what we fought for, then we should see it to its logical conclusion. If that's what we fought for, we need to constantly measure ourselves and say, have we achieved it or not, and do all that we can. So I think we succumbed to greed too quickly by our leaders. We got diverted very quickly, and we forgot about the people. That's why you have to love your people in order to lead them, because you want your people to at least reach their potential. Not fullest potential, just their potential. I never thought, by way of an example, that the people on the top of the food chain, who are called doctors, when you and I grew up and you were a GP in the township, it was like a license to print money.
Yeah.
Now 800 of them have qualified. In Gauteng alone, can't be employed. Because you see, when you steal money, eventually it gets finished. These are the children whose parents have sold their 15 cows in Limpopo as their last hope. Now they look at them, they are suffering from mental health issues because they are not unemployed and period poverty.
So if If we were to say, okay, what ideas are there to refashion BEE? What would you recommend?
So first of all, we need to say it is a planned and positive process and strategy that is aimed at transforming the socio-economic environments that have excluded individuals from economic mainstream, in order for these individuals to gain access to developmental opportunities, to opportunities including developmental opportunities based on their suitability. That's what we want to do. So when you look at that, you then say, then there's a problem when 8.3% of the population, which is white, occupies 67% of the positions of leadership. C-suite, I'm talking about COs and CFOs, because it's not sustainable, even for white people. The 2 weeks in July of 2021 will happen again and again until we give these blacks something also to lose. We need to say 52.5% of the population is female, and that women representation in positions of leadership is less than 24%. African women less than 4%. It's not sustainable, especially because we know during COVID that the 8 countries that dealt better with COVID had women as the head of state. So why can we trust them with our lives, but we can't trust them with our livelihoods? So if those are the fundamental principles, we then need to say Edward Kidsvetter collects on average last 15 years 1.4 trillion from companies and you and I. Yeah. You divide 1.4 trillion by 65 million South Africans. There's no reason why anybody should go to bed hungry. And yet 30 million South Africans live below the poverty datum line. That's what we must solve. Business must stay awake at night to say, how do we solve this conundrum? Especially because the world is replete with examples. The Afrikaners had one agenda to eradicate the poor Afrikaner problem. By 1972, gone. Ours was, we, in the Freedom Charter, the 9 principles says, and the land shall belong to those who work it. Mm-hmm. Africans still own less than 5% of the land. They're still squashed in 13% of the land. We haven't really achieved that. So
is the problem with the BEE codes, or is it about the overall conceptualization of the legislation itself?
It's both. It's about saying, what did we fight for? We fought for the land. What did we fight for? For justice. And our constitution is very clear. It says it's the best in the world because it rests on these 3 principles. Number 1, constitutional democracy. 2, social justice. Justice to do what? Lastly, it says fundamental human rights. Freedom of association, freedom of speech. The one that's less sexy to talk about. It talks about freedom from hunger. 31 years into democracy, poverty still has primarily a black and feminine face. So we haven't succeeded. So why we want to give up when the task has actually become bigger? Why are we giving the mic to the DA, not to the people that are still suffering? Why is it that you can give somebody a pen and say, come and write on my book, and you expect them to write your story? You must write your own story. So I think it's solving the reason why this country became free in the first place. Thereafter, you then say, but what are the transformative instruments? Because then you address it. Look at the people who have chosen to get into bed with the DA. These are the people who, on record, have stated that our job is to accelerate the implosion of the ANC. Because it's clear that they are incapable of delivering this democracy. We must deliver our own form of liberal democracy. They define it. 2, it says, we disagree with them on everything, especially the transformative instruments. They disagree with us. That's why they took us to court on employment equity. 2, on the Bella Act, ostensibly just for 2 reasons. Because they want to retain Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Number 2, the school governing bodies must have the right of veto as to who comes in. Only those 2 things. But they disagree with us on NHI. When you say NHI, it sounds like a big English word. Yeah. The United Nations says it's universal, equitable access to good quality healthcare. Who'd be against that? But they're taking this government to court. They disagree with us on land expropriation without compensation, even though it is the Africans who were dispossessed, and therefore they lost their cattle and they lost their livelihoods. And then there were a myriad of taxes, even whether they were not able to say that tax must be paid in cash, Because they knew we had cattle who were roaming around.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay it with cattle. It had to be in cash. The poll tax, the clay tax. And that's what we need to be changing. That's why I'm saying we need to go back to say the essence of truth everywhere else in the world is to let suffering speak. Suffering is quiet.
Yeah.
Who's speaking? The people that were disadvantaged, that are still advantaged, who are beneficial. Of course, they will oppose you. Especially because we don't want our children to disown us and say we are the only African country to be free from colonialism, and we didn't substantially increase the education level. We didn't increase the ownership by the indigenous people by at least double digit. But we are the only African country to be free from colonialism after 30 years. We voluntarily handed over power to the colonizers, oppressors, and racists. White people, the whole world, have never voluntarily given up privilege. It's never happened. So why are we doing it?
You mentioned earlier the character of Ket Matlala. Now, someone might have thought, the whole issue or the whole problem of state capture was done and dusted, and it was closed with the Zondo Commission. Are we experiencing state capture 2.0?
It's never stopped. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, in his own way, says, one of the most painful things I've ever had to do in my life is to be asked to write this Zondo report. The first report took 4 years, R1 billion, 487 pages, calls by name 97 ANC members. Then to be called by the president to ask these same people I've named in the report to put their right hand on the Bible and to swear them into the policymakers. I've never had to do something so painful. Only yesterday was Malusi Gigaba and Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama and Anoch Singh charged. But they were named then. And we did the same, by the way, even though we like commissions, with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. 4,000, not 400, 4,000 people didn't qualify for amnesty. Biki SV Minyuku, doctor, was the CEO at that time, with Bishop Emeritus Mpilo Desmond Tutu. Not a single successful prosecution. The Zondo Commission, that took us that 4 years and that amount of money, not a single successful. But we still continue with the commissions. We're not learning that these commissions are not working for us. But we must say thank you to General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, because he has told us things we know that we can see. But he put them in such a systematic, chronological and methodical manner, and more often than not providing evidence and the WhatsApp messages. He had told Parliament before, but it's only when he went public that we ran around and said, no, we must have a commission. We must have to do what? And now what is coming out, it is really blood-curdling. Now we understand in hindsight why all our commissioners of police, bar one, never finished their term. Because they are focusing on getting money from the drug lords and the murderers.
But what is the root cause of this? How did we get to this point where organized crime is able to infiltrate and begin to control even like your topmost police officials?
Only two reasons. One, it was said by an ANC member himself who was part of the Elephant Consortium to say, I didn't go to the struggle to be poor. Number two, because we succumbed to greed. Because we forgot that when you choose to be a public servant, the definition is in the name. When you say public protector, it's clear who the protector is protecting. So when you say I want to be a public servant, it's two powerful words. It says public, which means I forgo the Bentley. I've never seen public servants who live in Waterfall Estate and also have a house in Constantia. Angela Merkel uses public transport. In Switzerland, we see the politicians. We take underground troops with them. And the second word says servant, to serve the people. Not to expect to use my own dedicated lift when I go to my office. That when I walk through the room, people stand up to attention. That when I take an SAA plane, I've lost the ability to carry my own bag. Now somebody must carry my bag. It says servant. Because servant leadership is not a leader with many servants.
But what has gone wrong that enables this kind of criminality to get into the state itself?
I think we just lost our way and we succumbed to greed. At the root of everything we've done, it is greed. So the 6th administration, the 7th administration came with the most amazing goodwill. Now we know state capture has been continuing. It's never stopped. It's not state capture 2.0. It's just continued. Because think about it. One hospital, Tembisa, the SIU provides not a final report. This is an interim report. It says up to here, 2.2 billion has been stolen. And it calls by name Vusimiseket Matlala as one of the people implicated in the assassination of Babita Deokaran. By name. This ANC-led government, after that, they give him a 360 million tender. So that what? The Minister of Police can say, no. Thank you for the 5 million you've given me, but actually what I want is 50 million. The other one says, thank you for the 2 million you've given me, but what I want is 10 million. Because you can see they're not working for us. But you saw even in the testimony of Madlanga Commission, it says, when they talk about the top 5, 3 of them live in Hyde Park, maybe by accident. That's where the president lives. Says, this one opens his curtains and he sees a car parked outside. He calls the chief of the Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Police Department. When you call them at night and they say, I'm just about to be killed by my husband, he's got the gun, I'm going to die. They say, we don't have a car to come to you. Even if we won't come now because we are afraid. We'll come at 6 when it's light. But he gets this one call. He jumps onto his bicycle. He goes to his house and says, show me. He looks and says, no, jump into my car. An official car. He takes him to the government department where he works in Ekurhuleni. He opens the government system and says, let's have a look. Oh, it's a police car. They are watching you because you are just about to be arrested. All of these. Now there's resources that you and I are not afforded. But at the day that they go and arrest him, the hawks come there at double the number. A helicopter hovers at low just to intimidate. Now they've got resources. So you can see that actually these people were not here to serve us. It was about me, myself, I. So at the root of it, when we strip it of all the good English, it's just greed.
What, just to wrap up, what is your wish for South Africa?
What I wish for South Africa is that we should use our vote wisely. In Australia, if you don't vote, it's a criminal offense. The last national elections, 27 million people were eligible. Only 10 million bothered to turn up. That's fewer than those that could. Let's use it wisely. Because this democracy has not worked for black people. Because 31 years into democracy, poverty still has primarily a black and feminine face. So we should choose leaders that will help us to root out and defeat state capture, that will complete the unfinished work of transformation, that will give us ethical leadership, because ethics is what you do when nobody's watching. That will give us good governance, because good governance is not stealing from the mouths of babies, the sick and the dying. We should demand people who will give us just service delivery. At the moment, the infrastructure is crumbling. Lastly, we demand law and order, safety and security, because South Africans, all of us, are not safe walking on the streets because we are exposed. One can almost understand. But we are not safe sleeping in our own homes, which is our castles, our sanctuary, because it's contact crimes that are increasing. And now we know why. It's because the police are helping the drug lords. It's the illicit cigarettes, the illicit liquor. It's actually the drugs which they take from one group and they won't sell to the other. That's why most of our DJs are being slaughtered because of these drug lords. And by the way, the guns that are found in Mitchell's Plain, in the Cape Flats, were sold by a policeman.
Now, Prof, you are one of the most respected leaders in South Africa. Whether you're talking business leaders or just generally leaders in the country, who are concerned about the welfare of the country. Would you consider going into politics to give a different kind of leadership? Is it something that you would? Because the some people say part of the problem that we have in South Africa is that you've got the wrong people sailing the ship, and the people who have the ideas and the capacity are actually outside the state at all levels. Whether you're talking in parliament or you're talking in the civil service and all the way down.
I agree with that sentiment, because in KwaZulu-Natal alone, the Auditor General, not me, says 268 councillors are illiterate. So how do you expect them to oversee a budget of 53 billion? So for me personally, I've always had huge desires to be a businessman. My whole life. I left medical school to be a businessman. So I want to be a president of business.
Not of the country.
I leave that to people that are more patient than I am. But you're absolutely correct. My grandmother says, nature doesn't allow a vacuum. When you leave politics as good people, the not so good people will occupy it. So I think we need to think hard and long as to what are we going to do to fix our politics. Because at the moment, the death of leadership is everywhere. That's why we talk about Steinhoff, the biggest heist in this country. We talk about 150-year-old company, Tongat Hewlett, also greed. We talk about the Tembisa Hospital, but VBS was destroyed. So I think Jethro, speaking to his son-in-law Moses, says, go to the community and find yourself men that are wholesome, that are God-fearing, but that hate ill-gotten gain, to look over the thousands and the hundreds and the tens. That's wise counsel. I think we need our own Jethro. There are many good quality South Africans that could do a 10 times better job. But remember, state capture rested on those 4 legs. First was, of course, you had a shadow state, not parliament. The second, you repurpose the SOEs and SOCs so that you can milk them. But here's the third one. You got rid of the good people and you replace them with people whose only claim to fame is to agitate and orchestrate for state capture. And of course, the last leg is you wanted the National Treasury because it owns 2 things. It owns the PIC, which is the biggest asset manager in the continent, but it also owns SARS. That's why you could steal money from a Stina dairy farm that was meant for black people and hold a wedding of the century in Sun City. And then you have put Tom Moyane at SARS, and then you put it as a business expense, and the 30 million gets refunded to
you. Professor Bonang Mohale, whose aspiration is to be the president of business. We thank you very much for your time. It is much appreciated. Well, that's where we end this week's episode of the Politics Weekly. My name is Maxi Luma. Until next time, stay safe and let's do good for our country.